Hey, my name is Sin,
This is Ian.
and here we talk about the psychology behind professional development. And today's topic is burnout, the different stages of it, and how do we figure out where we are so we can start working towards recovering from it. Ian, let me
Yeah.
ask you this. Have you ever seen anyone or known anyone that has experienced burnout?
Yes, I've been. I think it's safe to say that we all have at one point or another.
Yeah.
Yes, myself, people I've worked with over the 2 decades, even
Hmm.
people that I think that we come across daily. You can just kind of see if you're going someplace, like if you're getting a cup of coffee somewhere, or if you're
Oh,
going out to eat somewhere. You could just kind of look in some server's eyes and
yes.
the look of just, that look of why am I
Exhaustion.
here? And you can just see it. So yes, to answer your question, yes, we
Yeah.
have. I've seen it a lot. I'm pretty sure you have too. I'm pretty sure, you are in the realm of individuals that have experienced it.
Honestly, and I'll tell you, I am burnout resistant. That's a joke. That's a joke. Here's a joke, right? No, absolutely. I've gone through burnout and
Yeah.
many different stages of burnout. And personally, those are some of the hardest times where my imposter syndrome it kicks in. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back and take a listen to it because I felt like I was giving it my best. I was doing the work and all these things. I had no idea that I was actually in burnout when I was doing them.
Yeah.
Right. The
Yeah.
internal chatter would just dial up a bit every single day. It's like, oh, you could be doing more.
Right. And I think it's the do more, do better. And
Yeah.
it's the constant voices of that. And
Right.
I can remember clearly many
Hmm.
times being a social worker, being a teacher, how
Yeah.
it was, what can I do better? What can I do more of to prove to them that
Right.
I am fit to be here, that I am the piece of their puzzle? And I
Hmm.
think because of that mindset, then it becomes a lot more stressful. Then it becomes, steps to
Yeah.
burnout because you're just doing more and more and more. And I know we're going to talk about that,
Absolutely.
in this episode, but it's just sometimes it's just human nature, I think, to do
It
that.
really is because we want to, build something that we're proud of. And in a previous episode, we talked about stress, how that's a badge of honor, but it really
Right.
isn't. And in this episode, we really wanted to dive deeper into burnout because most recent research shows nearly 50% of the working population has experienced burnout within the past year,
Sure.
right? 54%. That is incredible, especially our listeners, the mid career, mid level, who have been even uh, so burned out that they've wanted to quit. It's like, I'm done with this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes that burnout doesn't it's a slow build and you don't even know that you're going into this. And when I see clients that are in burnt out, they're like, I don't like my job. I feel like I'm doing the same thing. I don't know exactly what my purpose is, right?
Right.
I'm depressed. I'm not having a good social life within work, outside of work, and my balance is all skewed.
Right. And
Right.
I think because when you're sacrificing yourself
Yeah.
for what you feel is a greater good of the job and yourself to say, well, and to your point, I can be better and do better. And
Mhm.
if it's your legacy, you want to bring your A game every day. To do
Right.
so, to bring your A game every day, to be at the pinnacle of your career,
Mhm.
what you feel is the upper echelon of you, sacrifices have to be made.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the
Yeah.
problem comes in as to what sacrifices are you willing to make? And there's many people out there that will gladly say, I've knocked out 70, 80 hours a week. I don't see my
Yes.
kids. I wake up at 4 in the morning and I swear by it.
Mhm.
And I eat this certain way and I have this certain sleeping
The
schedule, right? And
regimen.
I've got,
Yeah.
yeah. And so those are the sacrifices that they make, and I think
Mhm.
that we've all made the sacrifices. And then there's a point one day where we reach a recognition of why. Why am I making these sacrifices? What have I truly
Right.
accomplished? Is it all worth it?
Yeah.
And I think that kind of leads to a burnout mentality, or those
That's
steps, I should say, is probably you're in burnout once you're doing those things and thinking
it's
those
true.
ideas.
It really is true. Like, I burn out into three clusters, largely because we don't really know we're in burnout until the picture that we see in our mind. Again, I'm going to go back to like Office Space.
Mhm.
If you haven't watched
Please
it,
do.
please,
Oh
please go
God, please
watch
do.
it.
Oh, you do yourself a favor
Oh,
and watch it
it's
if you
it's
haven't.
fantastic. It's
Just
fantastic. I'm not gonna go into more too much detail, right? I don't want to ruin the movie, but if you haven't seen it, I'm gonna ruin the movie.
if you haven't seen it since it came out in the mid '90s, if you haven't seen it already, I
Right.
mean, you can spoil it. I
Yeah.
think it's okay. You can
Okay.
pause. People need to
Okay.
pause it
I
here
didn't
and
know if
then
there was like a
probably pause it and then like play it later if after you see the
right.
movie.
Yes.
You
Like
know?
we talked about the case of the Mondays. I think that was like one of our first episodes
Oh god, I
in
love
this,
that.
right? Again, we reference this because it's such a great film talking about burnout and what that leads people to, right? Having the case of the Mondays, everything seems to be repeating. So I
Right.
wanted to break it down into like three clusters that we see burnout in. Acute, that means, you're just feeling it as a situational basis. All right. And this is where imposter syndrome comes in. Then overworking, right? Oh, 40 hours. I worked 80 hours last week, 60 hours, 50 hours, whatever that looks like. Neglecting your needs, right? Yeah, I missed a dinner. I missed lunch with family member, friend, kids, whatever that looks like. And then the interpersonal conflict starts as well. It's
Yeah.
gradually increasing how much in that burnout space we're in, just in acute burnout. Once we've graduated from interpersonal conflict, we go into like moderate burnout, which is reevaluating your values. What is more important? And you start identifying like, well, when I become successful, my whole life will solve itself.
I think that's a fallacy right
Yeah,
there of the if
absolutely.
when. If I become well,
Yes.
it's a when, it's, what do you define as successful? And then I think
Right.
recognizing that once you become successful, whatever it looks like, then what?
Yeah.
Because it only goes
Yeah.
downhill from there because
Right.
success is a destination, it's not a constant.
Exactly.
In certain people's frames of mind, it's just,
Yeah.
I need to get the title could be the success,
Right.
the amount of money you make could be the
Yep.
success. Those I think those are like the main 2 in my head, I think those are the main 2.
I mean, also the flexibility, the prestige, right? The awards, the
Right.
accolades, all these things can be a
Good point,
measure of
yeah.
success.
Right.
And it's subjective to every individual,
Mhm.
but you're right. The financial gains and the title are the stereotypical what success looks like,
Right.
right? And this is where just because let's say last year you said, oh, once I make X amount, I'll be successful. And this year comes around, you're making that much. And then it goes next year, when I make X plus
Mhm.
amount, then I'll be successful.
Yeah.
That that checkpoint just keeps moving forward and
Right.
we're always playing catch up, right? So it really starts to modify the way our psyche works
Yeah.
because it talks about our identity, our definition, and how we change our values to meet the imposter syndrome, meet the burnout definition instead of stepping back. And what
Yeah.
happens within this journey is I see a lot of people feeling isolated, right? I just mentioned like over 50% of the population of our listeners, right, in mid-level have experienced burnout in the past year, right? Most of them feel
Mm.
they are going at this alone, right?
Mm.
No one else is going through this
Right.
like I am. Right. Yes, it is different and it is specific to an individual's journey, but we start separating ourselves from the community and we say, this is my problem. I'll get through it. It's just hard this year. It's just hard this month. It's just hard. We're starting to build more reasons and excuses to put distance between us that are going through burnout and them who are not.
And I think now it is
Yeah.
recognizable, and there is a lot more research about what burnout looks like, and obviously there are
Hmm.
stages. And I think that back in the day when I was teaching and a social worker,
Yeah.
more so teaching,
Hmm.
I didn't realize it was burnout. I thought it was part of the job, but it's expected to. So, a great example is when you're teaching, get up a certain time, you teach for X amount of hours.
Hmm.
You have for lunch, so I had 25-minute lunches.
Hmm.
Again, this is all part of the schedule. And then when you're
Yeah.
done with teaching, then you have to do lesson plans and do all the things. And so
Right.
your 8.5 hour day, extends out to about 10, 11,
Yes.
12, which
Oh,
you're like, well, this is part of the job. So
yeah.
then You like, you know what, I've got something this evening. I can't do the lesson plans. I guess I have to do this weekend.
Mhm.
Again, you're just recognizing that I'm just kind of catching up. This is part of the
Yeah,
job. And so
yeah,
over time, you're now recognizing that a 40-hour work week slowly gets to 45, then slowly becomes 50, which
right?
becomes 55. And then over time, you're recognizing that, well, at least I'll have some time over vacation. Well, the
Yeah,
problem is over
or over the
vacation
weekend.
or over the weekend. Now, in both
Yeah,
situations, you're thinking, well, you know what? I have to catch up on certain things so I can prep
yes.
my class accordingly, so I can prep my
Mhm.
lesson plans accordingly. I've got to follow the curriculum. I've got, in my
Yeah,
case, I had many IEPs to go over, meetings to kind of recover and people to talk with. So, all this to say, it's like you're recognizing that the job requires certain responsibilities, but then something takes over to realize that if I did a little bit more, then that's part of the job as well. And so the more
yes,
you're adding on to yourself and your
right.
responsibilities, the less you're recognizing that it isn't the job. It's just you believing that this is what the job
Yes,
is asking for.
right,
And
right.
then, it's just a snowball effect.
It does snowball, and it takes time to snowball, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is I really appreciate your example because we talked about it in one of our early episodes of,
Mhm.
these Sunday scaries,
Yeah.
right? It's just because the weekday and the weekend start blending together, even in vacation. It's like, oh, if I can, let me just go ahead and put 2 hours away for work. That way,
Right.
when I get back, I won't have to.
Right.
Right? That's just a job creeping into your personal life,
Yeah.
right? And it creates that reevaluating your values, the social isolation, and you
Mhm.
start withdrawing from activities that you really appreciated before, right? The cookouts with your friends, right? The
Mhm.
beach days, things like
Right.
that that you really enjoyed. It starts taking a backseat more of the time, and you're just saying no to the things that gave you joy, gave you purpose, revitalized you.
Yeah.
Because right now, if I can just spend 2 hours today, it'll be set for next week,
That's right. That's right.
right? That 2 hours comes. It's like I didn't get everything done, so I'm going to spend maybe another hour or two. Then
Right.
4, 5, 6 hours later, you've just ruined your weekend
Yeah.
or ruined your vacation. Your partner, right? Your kids aren't happy,
Because you're not happy.
right? Because you're not happy. They
Right.
see the hard work, right? You're putting in, but they don't see you enjoying the time that you're sacrificing.
And now you blame the job. You blame the
Absolutely.
responsibilities from
Yeah.
what the original point of having a job is or where you were working is because you enjoyed it.
Right.
Now it takes
Yeah.
this 180 of um, like a love-hate relationship
It's true.
that you put so much of this
Hmm.
responsibility on the job and you blame the job
Right.
where it's the enemy. And now
Yeah. I
you're
mean,
fighting the
it's
enemy on a daily basis.
right. Well, it's not simply the job that you're blaming. You're blaming your
Right.
friends for having and not
Mm.
giving having strong work ethic that you do. Right. You're blaming your family for
Right.
constantly wanting more from you. You're
Yeah.
blaming everybody else. There's a level of apathy and anger that starts to steam from this moderate level of
Yeah.
burnout. And as we go into severe burnout cluster, right, is just a ball of anger and apathy
Yeah.
that consumes your energy,
Yes.
right? Consuming your mental load, your physical load, your psychological load.
I mean, I've seen people
Yeah.
that once they leave a job that they're burned out from
Hmm.
and they go, whether it's a career change or just a job change, it's like night and
Yeah.
day. The person is just like
Yeah.
so much happier, right?
Yeah.
And you can just see that their whole being and their presence, they're
Right.
just so much they look so much healthier, right?
Yes.
So that's the thing is that with
Yes.
burnout, you're just so much in it that
Mhm.
you don't know if you're happy or not. You're just
Yeah.
there and you're just
Yeah.
like, well, this is the job. Well, at least in my case, I would say, well, this is the job. This is the expectations. And so
Right. No,
it can be
for me, it
challenging.
was project based. Like after I
Hmm.
finish this project, I'm gonna be set. It's gonna be XY optimized, so it'll be wonderful once I finish this project. I'll have downtime, and then I can
Mm.
tweak all these things, right? But one thing that I started recognizing is I was getting angry at the littlest things,
Yeah.
right? So I have two cats. now, right? When I experienced this episode of burnout, I had one cat and I was just like, you want my attention right now? Like,
Well,
it's
they're
a
cats.
cat. They're adorable, right? They're adorable. But I had that thought, I had that feeling about it because I was so
Yeah,
burnt out that I couldn't depersonalize like by saying like, okay, let me go ahead and separate myself from work for 5 to 10 minutes
right,
and spend time with my cat, right? A
right.
little play goes a long way,
Yeah, and so just kind of getting
right?
those breaks in there
Right.
when you are locked in is a
Yeah,
challenge in itself sometimes, and that's another
it
episode
is.
about time management and, just breaking
Absolutely.
things out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
once we start like depersonalizing our identity, it becomes so enmeshed. We are what we do, right? We've
right.
entered severe burnout. If you give me feedback on my work, you're attacking me,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
If I don't deliver, I disappointed myself.
right.
It becomes so enmeshed that
I think it's a question of
you
how
will
you
start.
deliver. Well, I think it's
Yeah.
just how you deliver, it's not what you deliver,
Well,
because you're going you because
yes and
you're
no.
delivering projects back in the
Yes
day.
and no, right? Yes and no. It didn't matter what I delivered. I could have delivered, A plus, but it didn't meet my, twisted sense of
Mm,
my perfectionism
okay.
because I'm already weighed down by so much negative thoughts,
Mm, yeah,
right? And I'm isolated at this time, right? I am angry with everybody,
right.
right? So I'm not even seeing clearly, right?
Wow. I
This
can't
goes,
imagine you being I can't envision this version of Sim. I mean, like, you being weighed down. I cannot
yeah,
imagine that.
I
I seriously
know.
can't.
And can you imagine about 50% of our population are going through this,
I don't want
right?
to, but I can understand it.
Yeah,
That's
and a
the
lot of
thing.
people hide it,
Right.
right? That
Hey, they don't know it.
isolation helps. The withdrawal from social situation helps. It's like, oh man, Sim's really busy right now. I haven't seen him in months. And this is where
Yes.
it becomes like we feel we're going at this alone because nobody is sharing with us that they're also experiencing these stages of burnout.
Or because to your point, you're not answering phone calls, you're saying, "I can't go out,"
Yeah,
if they reach out, because there's probably a certain point where if someone
yeah,
reaches out to you 2 times, that
right.
third and you're blocking or you're saying, "No, I can't make it these 2
Or
times,"
ghosting.
or yeah, then there will
Yeah,
be no third time that they're gonna reach out
yeah.
because they're
No,
gonna believe you're too busy. So already
exactly.
that unintended consequence of
Mhm.
isolationism,
Yeah, yeah, and then you start feeling empty.
right?
What is the
Because
purpose?
it's
Why am
just
I
the
doing
work.
this? It's
Well,
just
it's
the
just the
work,
work.
and
That's
work isn't
yeah,
even giving me happiness anymore.
right.
It's not fulfilling my identity anymore,
That's right.
right? And this is where a lot of things we feel trapped, right? We're really unsure of how bad we have it, right? That emptiness starts and that then it becomes despair. The idea of I cannot keep doing this again and again
Yeah,
and again. I can't go another day, right? In severe cases, you're in severe depression and maybe even that looks like excessive drinking, right? It could look like not eating. It could look like physical harm, suicidal ideation, things
right.
like that, where you're just like, I need to escape this at all cost because I don't know what to do. I don't know how I'm feeling. At that point, you're in that level of complete burnout where it can
So they
take years to recover,
that's tough
right?
in itself.
Because absolutely, absolutely, right? Because you are in a mental and emotional collapse and your identity is gone. You've isolated yourself from the people who care about you,
Yeah.
right? You've slowly put yourself in a corner where you feel no one can help, no one understands you, right? It gets bad. It gets
So,
really bad.
with all that, obviously jobs have stress, right? So
Yeah.
what is the differences between stress and the burnout?
Stress is situation. We talked about eustress and distress in 2 episodes ago, right? And eustress is something that is stressful and challenging, but you're enjoying it, right? A
Mm,
stretch assignment. Distress is something that you have to do. You don't really enjoy it, but you have to do it. And
right.
it just keeps getting put in the backlog. Burnout is a level of constant stress, and it doesn't have to be stress by situation. It could be stressed by people, the relationship. You have toxic work environment, toxic bosses, right? You have your imposter syndrome thoughts are just spiraling and spiraling,
Yeah,
and you are anxious all the time. And it's a constant state of being burnt out. And this is where a lot of people don't know that they are already in burnout
yeah,
until they get to the moderate to severe levels of burnout, which can take like 3 to 6 months to get to, right? And this
yeah,
is situational stress. Once the situation is over, okay, I can get back to, you know, my regular self. I am not isolating myself, right? I am not revaluating. I'm not putting my job as my identity, and it is the only thing that means anything to me. Right?
sure.
I'm not getting angry at my cats.
I would get angry at your cats because they're cats. I'm not a cat person, but that's that's a whole different
What?
situation.
Oh
It's not the
my
cat's
gosh.
fault. It's not Tim's fault.
We just lost 90% of our
Half the
listeners right now. Ian is not a
Sorry,
cat
I'm
person.
not a cat person.
What?
I'm putting it out there.
Wow.
You can put it, you can put thumbs down on the comments. I
Oh
understand.
no.
That's
Goodness. It's
dogs.
okay. It only
Dog.
means Ian hasn't met the right cat yet. That's the only thing that means anything. It's
Oh my
okay.
gosh.
We'll make sure you meet the right cat.
Yeah, no, that
Yeah.
cats would stress me out.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean,
Yeah.
so
It's
that's I mean, just think about
it's a
if you're
hard topic to talk about, Ian. Burnout.
it is.
Really
I mean,
is.
if you're looking at just from a numbers perspective, you're saying about 53% are burned out.
Hmm.
So are you expecting to burn out when you start a job? Or are the odds
Yeah.
stacked against you when you start a job like, well, I'm going to be experiencing burnout at this job?
Right. That's a really good question. And I think it really depends on how you understand your triggers to
Yeah,
burnout, right? Because you can't go from zero burnout to severe burnout. That doesn't
yeah,
happen,
that's right.
right? If you're recognizing the symptoms and the stages that you're in and you're taking appropriate action, right? Most of us don't need to go into moderate burnout or severe burnout. Those two exist because we have neglected ourselves
Right.
for so long that is just a evolution of the severity of our burnout.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree that we should be able to do things to minimize,
Yeah.
maybe prevent
Yeah.
if possible, and just changing the mindset. And since you are the expert between the
Yeah.
two of us of what that looks like, what are
Yeah.
like the techniques to be utilized or to switch the mindset to either minimize the burnout or to
Yeah.
recognize you are in burnout and then change it.
Great question. Great question. So, first of all, you need to recognize that you may be in a stressful situation or
Mhm.
you may be in a burnout situation.
Okay. Yeah.
Stressful situation is temporary. Once it's over, then you're back into your normal status quo, right? I can't
Right.
say, I will mention, I guess, that both can coexist. You can be burnt out and stressed, all
Yeah.
right? Then it just
I can get that.
really amplify how quickly you're going to progress through the burnout stages. So, first, recognize, are you in a stressful situation or are you in a burnout situation? And if there's a combination of both, then you really need to start seeking out that support you need. This episode is sponsored by Balanced at Last, my coaching services. That's balanced at last.com. If you are curious about how I can help you, please schedule a free consultation call, a 20-minute call to assess your challenges and ways my services can help you. Mention you are a podcast listener and receive 20% off your coaching services. Offer valid for a limited time. Visit balancedatlast.com or scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description below. Thank you for listening. And one of the key component of burnout becomes you are starting to distance yourself from your work,
Hmm.
not your work, your people,
Yeah.
but you are really enmeshing with your work, right? And work is takes number one priority, number two priority, number three priority. And this is where
That's right.
you really need to say, I need a vacation or I need to take sick days to distance myself
And to do it right versus
and
if
to
you
do
take
it
a sick
right.
day or vacation, you don't
Yeah.
if you bring your laptop with you or if you're thinking about work, then you're
If
not
those things are happening, you're probably in
right,
a level of burnout,
right.
right? It's like I can't really leave my work laptop for 2 days.
Mhm.
Then you're probably in burnout.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
That's gonna
Yes, I
happen.
understand our work is very important, right? I
Right.
also understand there are project needs, but you also have to recognize that, taking your laptop, computer, phone, whatever it is, so you're connected to your work when you are dedicating for your recovery, that's just
Yeah.
the job creeping in, the burnout creeping in and stealing time and energy away from yourself,
Right.
your
And again,
recovery.
and you're thinking more than in
Mhm.
this because this hits home because in a previous job I did that
Yeah.
as well as I would take my laptop on vacation and
Yeah.
say, well, this I don't want the student to feel like I'm not responding at a certain time.
Yep.
And I had an expectation of a email response time to students.
Yeah.
So I
Did you
would
set
take
that expectation?
yes, I believe I did, and I
Yeah.
believe it was throughout the department as well.
Mhm.
Maybe it
Okay.
was yes, I think that was an expectation both from
Mhm.
self and through uppers. If it
Okay.
wasn't, maybe it was shifted from 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah.
But I think 24 was the mark to hit because you wanted to have good customer satisfaction, and
Absolutely.
so all this to say that I would bring that on vacation, even if I had the out of
Mhm.
office, in my head, I'm like, I don't wanna bother the other individuals working with
Yep.
me, that they have to, reach out or the person has to explain their whole situation to somebody else.
Yeah.
So let me go ahead and bring my laptop with me so I can answer the
Yeah.
questions and kind of, monitor my
Yeah.
emails. Even though my out of office reply is on there,
Right.
I would still do that. Yeah.
Right. And I've done the same thing of like, oh, let me just bring my work phone with me
Yeah.
in case I somebody needs something. Right. And
Right.
I will say for most of us that are not in the medical field, nothing that we are doing is life or death.
Correct, and then you feed into it. You feed into the, "Well, they need me, so I have to bring on vacation," and of course,
Yeah.
I think you just mentioned the phrase, "Let me just." You minimize it. You say, "Well, it's
Yeah.
just let me just bring
Just
it, no big deal,
that's
right,
it.
if I need to."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's I think the continuity of the
That's the
burnout.
creep, right?
Mhm.
That's the job
Yeah,
creep.
absolutely.
That's the imposter syndrome. That's overworking, all just creeping in slow doses. That's why a lot of us don't realize that we've been in burnout for at least 6 to 9 months
Yeah,
before we actually recognize I've been burnt out,
right.
right? And like I mentioned, the higher the severity of burnout, the longer it's going to take for you to recover. So I've had individuals that are in severe burnout and they wanted to turn around in 2 weeks, in a month, in 3 months,
Yeah,
right? The damages that you're doing, it takes time to recover. It really does take time. And the World Health Organization in 2019, right? This is only 7 years ago. They recognized burnout as a serious health hazard,
mm,
right?
can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Like
makes sense.
insurance in most of the countries, they won't cover for a burnout recovery.
So some countries do cover that or
Absolutely, yeah. Some countries cover that because they recognize burnout leads to higher cost for
right,
the organization,
that's
right?
correct.
It delays project timelines. It creates avoidable mistakes. And this is
Mhm,
where even in the medical industry, right, you see regulations of doctors only working a certain amount of
yeah,
hours, right? Even our logistics industry, you can only operate a truck for X amount of hours before you
that's
need
right.
rest, right? These regulations exist because we see the risk to reward is not there.
Yeah,
It isn't there. So when we are experiencing in the professional world, right? Not the medical, not the logistics, but in professional day to day, 9 to 5 ish world, right? Recognizing where we are and then creating our boundaries is some of the things that we need to do. Not just
yeah,
creating, but enforcing our
that's right.
boundaries is so important because I can
That's
say
right.
no once, But if my imposter syndrome, if my negative thoughts starts creeping in, it's like, well, you could have done that. You could have said yes to that,
But to your
right?
point of implementing the boundary, though,
Yeah,
you have to create and implement, and those are 2 hard things to
yeah,
do if you're so
very
much stuck
difficult.
in the it's so much.
Right. And this leads to the isolation part. If you are not prioritizing your relationship outside of work, then the work is the black hole, right? That's going to consume your time energy.
Yeah.
So, having that separation, comfortable separation, because I've been in a situation where my work friends were also my social friends,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And guess what? The conversations were always just turned towards work.
Yeah.
Like, no, no, we can
Right.
talk about anything outside of work, right? Because
Right.
I'm not getting paid to have work conversations when we are socializing externally.
But and it's easy to say that now, right? Easy
Oh,
when you're out of the
yeah.
situation, but at the time you're thinking, "Finally, I can talk to people about
Yeah.
work who are working." So you
Yes.
think, this is a good thing that you can socialize again.
Yeah.
And to your point, then it's another unintended consequence of you're talking more about work after work.
Right.
So it's just, you think you're getting out of the
It's
hole, but the hole is getting
right.
deeper,
It's
and it's
true. And this is why it's so difficult for a lot of people
mhm,
to recover from burnout in isolation alone. You need the community, you need the boundaries, you need
yeah,
accountability, you need to start recognizing those trigger points so you can start saying, like,
yeah,
oh, okay, this is a stressful situation. No, this is more of a burnout environment. So let me go ahead and create additional non negotiables, boundaries,
right.
so
I
I can
think to
protect myself from getting there.
I think that if you, uh, to the point, if you need to recap your situation with a third party, you know,
Hmm.
with and of course, I'm going to shamelessly plug your situation about being a career coach and talk to somebody. But if just you review your situation with a career
Hmm.
coach, a life coach, whomever, counselor, therapist, and you say,
Yeah.
"This is what's going on." I'm intrigued as to what that person says to
Yeah.
think that it's different from what you're experiencing. But you're probably going to one of these individuals and saying, "You know what? I'm not burned out. It's just there's a lot on my
Yeah.
plate," or maybe it's just being
Minimized.
minimized about what my situation is. But when you
Hmm.
talk with somebody and you're telling them your personal experiences, they'll say more than likely say, "Yeah, you're really burned out right now, and you
Yes.
just don't see it."
People hate
You know?
saying that, hearing that.
Yeah.
People hate hearing that. "No, I'm
No,
not burnt out,"
totally.
right? "No, I'm
Exactly
not
right.
burnt out," right?
Exactly
Because
right.
denial, because we don't want to be suffering when we are suffering,
Mm.
right? And to acknowledge it makes it true. So
Yeah.
it's easier for a lot of people. That's why I don't make those statements like, oh, those seem like burnout that you're talking about. I don't say that
Yeah.
because it's not for again, from a professional perspective, right? It's not my place to identify it for you. It's my place to help you see where you are in the spectrum, even though if I can see the symptoms, like, hey, these are some of the things that you've explained. Does this match the
Right.
12 stages that I outlined and the three clusters that we talked about, right? If you see yourself, if you heard like, oh, this sounds like where I might be,
Yeah.
right?
And by the way,
Maybe it's
those who are
time.
listening to this real fast, I'm just gonna cut in real fast. So
Yeah,
those who are listening to this real fast, there's 12 stages and grouped them. If you want more information about that, to click
yeah,
on STEM's blog and kind of look a little more in detail to see,
yeah.
if any of them speak to you about your current work situation. Because
Mhm.
this is a lot to go over in a podcast about 12.
It really is. It really is. And each we can have in-depth conversation about
Yeah.
each of those stages
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it has a pattern, but it looks different for every single
Right.
environment, right? This is why I isolated the logistics in the medical field a little bit
Yeah.
more, right? And this is where burnout, one in two people, if two adults are in the room, one person has probably experienced burnout
Man,
in that year,
that is just
right?
and you
Yeah,
really wonder if it's under if
it
it's
is.
being not under recorded, but if it's not truly accurate, like, what if that's the
Yeah,
low ball end of it, of
right.
53, 54%? What if it's individuals who aren't recognizing where they are, maybe it's higher, I mean, that to
Yeah,
me is just,
yeah.
I think of it just, wow.
Like the stats that I'm pulling is from surveys, right?
Mhm.
And there's
Right.
margin of error on surveys. But
Of course.
again, if you're seeing 50%, then it might be up to 70%,
Mhm.
right? It could be down to 30%, give or take,
Right.
right? But they've calculated all of that range to say around 54% have experienced burnout. Again, they don't classify which cluster. Is it acute? Is it moderate? Is it
Correct.
severe burnout?
Yeah.
But if you've gone through it, the chances of you going through it again is higher, and going
If you
through it
don't deal with it the
faster
first
is
time,
higher.
right? If you
Oh,
don't deal with it the first
absolutely.
time, then you're gonna deal with it then it's gonna happen over and over again.
Right.
And
Right.
if you don't
And
recognize it.
this is where, I want to bring back the example you mentioned, like how you can see a completely different person once they've left the
Mm.
job. And you see this, it's like, wow, you look so much better, so much different, right? If it's a toxic environment they left, that change will stay, right? If they're not going back into a toxic
Yeah.
environment. If it's a burnout they left because of burnout, give it 3 to 6 months and you're gonna start seeing the same patterns
Mhm.
again,
Right. Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
this is where it's so important to recognize if you are where you are individually so you can manage a toxic environment versus a burnout self
Mm.
or a stressful, situation. And this all comes into play in as we talk about, all the psychological components that come in when we are thinking about your professional development, right? For me,
Right.
I'll tell you, I was burnt out for probably year and a half
Mhm.
before I actually took action. And that was my pride, my ego.
Sure.
Like, no,
I
the
can do it.
system, the work, the environment doesn't have to change me. I'll change the environment.
Right.
Right. And after trying for a year and a half, I said, you know what? Unfortunately, the environment won and
Mm.
I've learned a lesson.
And it had to come to that point,
It
and
did.
it
Yeah.
and, looking back, it's probably it was unfortunate it had to get to that point,
Yeah.
and you had to go through what you had to go through, and I think
Yeah.
a lot of people who go through burnout, it is unfortunate to have to, I mean, 1 out of
Right.
2 people to go through certain processes and to go
Hmm.
through certain stages and steps during
Yeah.
burnout is just it's just no good. It's just no
It
good,
is.
and when the job wins, I think that's the problem.
Right.
The job
Right.
dictates.
It does. It does. I will also mention because we just talked about layoffs in our previous
Mhm.
episode,
Yes.
right? It doesn't have to be just because you're in a job that you feel burnt out. Because those unemployed, underemployed, they also experience burnout, right? Because it's a psyche thing, not a company based or a status
Yeah.
based.
Correct. And I think to your point, I think we do associate burnout with job, but it can be
Yeah,
you can have, life burnouts. You can
absolutely.
have, personal relationship burnout. There's
Hmm.
yes, burnout can apply to many different stages
Yeah.
or many different phases of your life. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we use the term burnout in the professional setting, right? In the personal setting, I think we talked about this in one of our early episodes
Mhm.
of it could look like anxiety, it could look like
Right.
depression, it could look like, adjustment challenges, right? Stress management. It could look so many different things in
Yeah,
the outside of the professional setting. In
that's
the
right.
professional setting, we identify it as burnout.
Yeah.
And that means layoff included, job searching included, right?
Sure.
Working included.
Yes.
All that is the professional setting.
Yes. And dealing with cats. You can
Whoa,
burn out
whoa.
dealing with cats, I think.
No, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't. All right. Nope. That is not possible. Cats are
Put it
amazing
there.
unless you have a cat that is a little assertive. I have our second cat. She is adorable. She is fantastic. But if it's 6 a.m. and you're still in bed, she will make her voices heard
Mm.
and she will make sure that you wake up by 6:15 and then she'll come into the room and say, "You didn't wake up. I'm very disappointed in you." Right? That is our second cat
Ah.
and she is almost 2 years old. So I
A
fear
lot of learning
for
to do. A lot of learning to do. Yes.
that's what I keep telling myself. That's what I keep telling.
Mm, mm, mm,
Well,
mm.
I am looking at the time.
Yes.
Last words, Ian.
Burnout is unfortunate, and if you are whatever stage you are in, please talk to somebody about what to do about it to get out of it and or to deal with it in a better way
Yeah.
so you can just enjoy your job a little bit more and your life a little bit more as well.
Yeah. No, I 100% stamp on that. Burnout is hard, and we often find ourselves alone without recognizing that other people are going through it
Right.
too. They also feel alone.
Yeah.
So
1 out of 2.
opening up about the stress and the feelings of burnout that you're going through might allow you others to share about their experience.
Absolutely.
Seeking help, external help, professional help is going to help your recovery go smoother, faster, and it might even make it a little bit easier. So when it comes to burnout, please recognize that most of us, if not every one of us, has gone through it at a point in time.
Yeah.
It can repeat itself if we aren't building in the resilience to see
Correct.
the early trigger points and start creating plan that works for you. For more information, you can definitely find the article we referenced in the description below, and feel free to reach out if you ever want to talk.
Absolutely.
That's it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you, Sam. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us and being part of the conversation. We hope this episode has given you some insight on your journey to a more balanced and fulfilling career. Please find Beyond the 9 to 5, a balanced career on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. Thank you for joining us.